We're back on Radio Row and joined by a Syracuse alum who has a pretty good idea of what's going on around the NFL after another season calling games on CBS. Andrew Catalon, thanks so much for joining us. And I know you're a month removed from the regular season wrapping up, but how was it alongside Jason, Tiki, AJ, and the whole crew? Another year covering, another crazy year in the NFL.
Yeah, Ian, thanks so much. So good to be with you guys again. I mean, I think it's just amazing that you're down there for the Super Bowl, and I wish you a great weekend ahead. I know it's already been a great week for you, so congratulations. For us, it was great. Lost Matt Ryan this year in the booth. Matt was with us the previous year and really enjoyed working with him. And kudos to him. He went on to the studio and did great things with the NFL Today on CBS this year. So you never know how that new person's going to go. But we couldn't have been happier with Jason McCourty. I think we've all seen his work now, whether it's on CBS or on ESPN. He does some studio work. He is really a student of the game, always eager to listen and learn and try to get better. And then so bringing him in with me and Tiki and AJ, it just meshed really well after a fun season with Matt. So, I thought it was a great year. We had a lot of Giants games. We saw the Eagles twice. Did not see the Chiefs, but did get to see Philly. So we got our way around the league a little bit, and it was a privilege to cover it all.
Yeah, season wrapped up with Giants Eagles, a game everybody from the outside expected. Oh, Eagles don't need this one. They'll trot out Tanner McKee. And then I think he said something like he's got 3 touchdown passes in 7 attempts. He's on pace for 1 million or something like that. But what do you think of this Eagles team? Obviously, Tanner McKee, hopefully for the Eagles, they don't have to see too much of him. And it's Jalen Hurts in his revenge game against the Chiefs 2 years later who's lighting it up. But what are your impressions of Philadelphia from what you've seen?
Yeah, I mean they are a worthy Super Bowl team. They get it done on both sides of the ball. Obviously, the running attack is what stands out the most. Yes, they can beat you with AJ Brown and Devontae Smith and Dallas Goedert, but we all know they're centered around the run. And I think that Saquon Barkley has just made an incredible impact on that team. We all see it on the field. Obviously, the huge numbers, 2,000 yards, but what he has meant in that locker room I think is even equally significant to what he has done on the field. He is the ultimate teammate. I think he's brought that team even closer together, and I think that this is a legit team that has a really good chance to win this game.
It always felt like a big part of the loss for Giants fans, speaking from experience, growing up a disgruntled Giants fan, was that he was always a Giant, right? He was a player that, when John Mara said that during Hard Knocks, I'm going to lose sleep if he goes to the Eagles, it wasn't just because he was a player who could, burst an 80-yard run at any time, but just did everything the right way from the time at Penn State to his time with some bad Giants teams. And maybe people didn't expect him to have such a breakout season with the Eagles, but it really shouldn't have been that much of a surprise.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think you heard some of the Giants players this year even say, yeah, we wish we had him in our offense, but we really needed him was in our locker room. When we were losing 3 or 4 games in a row or 9 or 10 games in a row for the Giants this year, he would have been the guy that could have helped us stay even keeled in the locker room, kind of led us back. And I think that he is the ultimate teammate. The people in Philadelphia absolutely love him. You saw when he was mic'd up in that first Giants game. He could have gone out and set a career high. He said, let's get the younger guys in there to play. He's a special person and a really easy guy to root for. I tell you what, he's on the precipice of doing something really special come Sunday.
Yeah, when you're being mentioned with a guy like Terrell Davis for most rushing yards in a single season in NFL history, including the postseason, you're doing something right. You mentioned how the Eagles are a deserving playoff team. I know a lot of fans around the NFL who weren't even fans of this team were pulling for the Detroit Lions to finally get to the Super Bowl. I saw something on your Twitter a few weeks ago. Dan Campbell, before we knew him as the man who bit off the kneecaps, he had that little stint in Miami where he was the interim head coach, and you were on the call for that game and mentioned on Twitter that that production meeting was just kind of special. What did you think of Dan Campbell? What were your first impressions of him? Whether that was your first impression of him or if you had covered him at all when he was a player too.
No, I vividly remember that we were in Tennessee. Joe Philbin had been fired. Dan Campbell took over. Had never met him before, and I don't think he had done many, if any, production meetings. To that point, and just so people know, production meetings when the coach comes in, the announce team meets with them. Gets an inside look, some candid answers, help us prepare for the broadcast. And I remember he came in, and he looked like a player. He still does look like a player. It's not like that much has changed. He had just worked out. He was sweating. He had a towel. He was in shorts. And he's like, how can I help you guys? And you could tell that he was really nervous, as anyone would be, and that a million thoughts were running through his head. How is tomorrow going to go? Because we met with him the night before. And they absolutely blew out Tennessee. And they actually did pretty well since he took over for Philbin. Didn't get to keep the job, but you could tell there was something special about him. And I feel like people in Detroit, now the rest of the NFL, are kind of seeing what we saw back when he took over for Philbin in Miami.
What were your initial reactions when he got the job in Detroit? When he had that crazy press conference, did your mind just instantly go back to that moment that you had with him?
Yeah, and I think Detroit needed a culture change, right? I mean, they had just been kind of stuck in a rut for so long. Nothing was breaking through. Nothing seemed to be working for them. They needed a guy like this to bring the passion and the energy back into the team, back into the fan base. And that's what he is. I mean, not only do I think he's a very good coach, and we see how he goes for it on fourth downs and he's aggressive, but just seems like the players really rally around him. And that's what they needed in Detroit. And while they did not get over the hump this year, and I know it's a huge disappointment, still feel like that the future is very bright for this Lions organization under Campbell.
It'll also be interesting to see how they respond to losing both coordinators to head coaching jobs. But the Eagles did the same thing, right? They've got Kellen Moore and Vic Fangio, and that hasn't slowed them down one bit as they try to get over the hump and take down the Chiefs like so many teams before them have tried to do. So you had a great year in the NFL. You mentioned bringing one of the McCourties into your booth and covering another great season there. Now it's hoop season. Was the first game for hoop season for you that St. John's Villanova game at MSG? How was that?
Yes.
Seeing St.
Yeah.
John's back to its former glory under Rick Pitino.
Yeah. St. John's is really having an incredible year. And, I remember at WAER when I was a student, I called a game at the Garden and we were way up top. I mean, nowhere near the court calling the game. I believe it was my senior year. And it was really special growing up in the New Jersey, New York area to call a game at Madison Square Garden, Syracuse, St. John's. It was just amazing. And now to go back there and call a game, it's still the same thrill. It's such a special place, Madison Square Garden. There's so much history. And now you get the joint jumping because they're all behind St. John's. It's a really cool thing. And it hasn't really changed since when I was a student to now, that same feeling when you walk in the garden.
What is it like to cover Rick Pitino now as an established broadcaster compared to, I don't even know where he was because he's built up so many elite programs over the years, but back when you were a student and you were probably just talking with the guys at AER about the best teams in the country, and Pitino's team was one of them.
Yeah. No, he's done an amazing job. You think about his career, the energies, in his early 70s, and he's probably got more energy than me and you combined. I mean, he gets after it all the time. It's a really cool story. I mean, I hate to sound East Coast bias, but when like St. John's is good, that's good for college basketball, right? I mean, when the Knicks are good, that's good for the NBA. I feel like that with St. John's on a roll right now and with Pitino, it's a really good storyline. It's been so long since they won a tournament game. I believe it was 2000. It's the last time they won an NCAA tournament game. If they're able to get back to the dance and win one, it'd be pretty neat for New York and for St. John's, led by Rick Pitino.
Yeah, unfortunately, I've seen too many Instagram reels and TikTok videos about college basketball is better when Syracuse is also at the top of that mountain.
Yeah.
Yeah, great run we've had in 4 years that I've been here. Anyways, how do because prepping for a singular NFL game is one of the toughest things that anybody can be assigned to do. How do you make sure that even when it's NFL season, you can still keep tabs on the college basketball world and the pro golf world, so that when you kind of make that switch in early January, you're not going in there relearning like every single storyline for all of the teams and all the athletes that you're covering.
Yeah, it's a great question. I feel like the golf one is tough. You really got to stay up to date on that. There's tournaments even in the fall up against NFL, and then when the West Coast swing starts, you're still in football mode, and then you're getting ready for college basketball, and you can lose sight of some of the tournaments or some of the storylines. So that's something that I'll keep tabs on all year long. I mean, if I see something of note in October, I'll take a picture of it on my phone, throw it on my laptop, and then come the spring when it's golf time, I'll be like, oh, I'm going to pull that out now, that little note or nugget or storyline. Basketball, I don't have as hard of a time. I can do my boards for NFL with a college basketball game on, or I'm listening to talk radio or reading something on my phone. I just feel like college basketball is easier to get caught up on, but it's the golf where you could really, if you don't keep a close eye, you can fall behind in that sport. So that's something I'm pretty conscious of.
I saw on your Twitter a couple weeks ago a little repost out of you for the PGA Tour golf game 2K25. How cool is it just to be involved in the promotion and in the game? And especially, I didn't grow up playing a ton of golf, but that's how you reach younger fans too, is, expressing that, hey, we've got a video game where, we can make these athletes a little more marketable and everybody can get involved. How cool is it to just be a part of that?
Yeah, I mean, I probably played way too much video games as a kid. Now I'm getting older, so NHL 94 on Sega Genesis, like that was my wheelhouse. Obviously, Madden, playing a lot of these games, and now having a son who's 10 years old and starting to play video games with him, and his favorite game is the golf game, it's PGA Tour 2K. So to know that that's kind of special for the two of us to play together, and now that I'll be a small part of it, it's a really neat thing. It's kind of come full circle for me.
Who's winning those matchups right now? Is it your kid or is it you on the console?
I still got him, but not. It's not automatic. It's not automatic. He can play, and actually he plays golf in real life, not just video games. So he's got a good little feel about how he can get me. So it's getting closer.
Wow, we think we got a future collegiate star there, maybe. Who knows? Keep him on the right, keep him on the straight and narrow. Keep him playing the game. Keep his mind
Yeah,
sharp.
exactly.
Yeah, I can never get my father to play Madden with me. I was just a couple steps ahead there. As you've been keeping tabs on the college hoop slate and you've seen some of these kind of sleeper teams emerge maybe as conference play has continued to roll on. I don't know if you've got the Magic 8 Ball next to you, but any teams that maybe the casual college hoops fan should keep an eye out for, whether you covered them already or you might be covering them coming up, is hey, rolling around March, maybe keep an eye on this team or two.
Yeah, I've only called a couple of games so far. Well, now that February and March are kind of upon us, I'll be getting into it a lot more. So I see a lot of the Big East. I think that I'm going to see Creighton next week against UConn in Creighton. Creighton already beat UConn in Connecticut this year. I'm looking forward to calling the rematch of that game. I think that Creighton is always a team that I feel like if they get hot at the right time can make noise in March. They have an incredible coach. They can shoot the ball. They got Ryan Kalkbrenner, who's one of the better big men in the country. I know they're kind of on the outside of the top 25 looking in, like a fringe top 25 team, but they're starting to play well. They beat UConn at home. I would imagine that gives them a little, extra notch up. And I think that Big East, let's face it, only got three teams in the tournament last year. I feel like there's going to be a little more edge on the Big East come March, and one of these teams might make a run. Marquette is a team that's really good that doesn't get talked about a lot. St. John's we already talked about, but I feel like they're going to be in that conversation. So someone from the Big East will emerge, and it could be UConn again. I mean, no one's going to count them out, but there's going to be someone from that league that I think makes a nice little run here come March.
Yeah, I'm sure one storyline that wasn't too difficult to follow for you and you were calling NFL games in the fall was Dan Hurley and in the Hurley effect this season. It almost feels like, he's been at front and center with everything, but that team is still going to be competitive. And It does it feel at all a little bit like the Big East that you covered when you were here as a Syracuse student, where sure Syracuse might not be in the thick of it anymore, but the grit in the coaching style and the playing style at least is somewhat reminiscent of what you saw when you were here as a student.
Yeah, I think that there's definitely some similarities. I feel like, and it's getting back to maybe the way it was. It's a little more rugged. It's a little more tough to win on the road. The physical play, you see it maybe a little more in the Big East than you do other conferences. Again, I still think that the Big East in its heyday, even before when I was a student, especially, but even the 80s Big East, you can't compare. 90s, late 90s Big East was good. Then it felt like maybe it dipped a little bit, and now it's kind of on the upswing again. And obviously, all of college athletics is so different now with the NIL and the portal. It's hard to have these types of comparisons when players are changing teams so much. But I feel like the competitiveness in the league and some of the coaches in the league, especially, you think back to those days when the Big East had great coaches. They have good to great coaches again right now.
You mentioned earlier that that trip to MSG a month ago for St. John's Villanova was a special one, and you did it as a student as well with WAER. When you think of the road trips that we here at Syracuse have the opportunity to do a lot of traveling to cover the teams, even as students. When you think of some of the most memorable ones from back in your day, where do some of the top ones slot for you? Even if it wasn't maybe the coolest place headed in, it ended up becoming one of the better trips.
Yeah, well, Syracuse played in the Great Alaska Shootout my senior year. So Damon Amendolara and I went to Anchorage, Alaska for a week. Syracuse won the tournament, which was kind of neat. And I'll never forget. It was over Thanksgiving time, so you'd wake up at like 6 o'clock in the morning, and like the Lions were already playing because of the time difference. And November in Alaska, the sun only is up for 3 to 4 hours, so it came up at like 10 a.m. It's set probably around 2 p.m. Just having never experienced anything like that before, I'll never forget that trip. Damon and I had a blast, and Syracuse won. And here you are, so far away from home. Your parents are still wondering, like, is this going to work? You're going to be a broadcaster. Now you're not home for Thanksgiving. You're in Alaska. They were so puzzled by like the whole trip. But we'll never forget that one for sure.
Oh, that was over Thanksgiving too.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, that's always the tough one to have is even in college sometimes with the schedules that student broadcasters put on themselves. You're missing trips, you have friends asking, "Are you home?" And no, I'm in Alaska.
Right,
But you know
exactly.
what? Those are the special moments too. Andrew, one of my last questions for you. I've been trying to ask all of the broadcasters, media personalities that we've had a chance to connect with leading up to the Super Bowl. Because I know I talked a little bit about the Eagles earlier, but from the Chiefs side of things, there's a narrative that people are sick of seeing Kansas City win. Even to a point where some analysts are saying that everybody has to hold off and really appreciate, this kind of moment in sports history because it doesn't come around often. Where do you kind of stand on Kansas City just sustaining what they have done under Patrick Mahomes and all the winning and all the Super Bowls over the last few years, and how the average fan should kind of, look at this game, even if it's not the Bills or the Ravens or the Bengals?
Yeah, no, I think that's a huge topic with this Super Bowl, and I think that a lot of people are probably wish that it was Josh Allen and the Bills or Lamar Jackson and the Ravens, just to give us a different look. But I think that would be taking away from the greatness of this Chiefs run. I liken it, Ian, to being. I grew up a Yankee fan, and people got tired of seeing the Yankees each and every year in the playoffs, and I understood that from a non-Yankee fan, but also as a baseball fan, you had to appreciate, or at least I thought you should have to appreciate, just how good this team was when they won, their three in a row or four of five. Like that doesn't happen very often. So I think with this Chiefs team, I understand the casual fan saying, I wish someone else was there. But for me, I think as a person who appreciates the league and its history, this is something special. This is something that you're not going to see very often, if at all. We've never seen a three-peat, as we know. I just feel like um, that narrative, while maybe fills some of the time over the last couple of weeks, it's probably time to now appreciate who they are, what they're doing, and what they can accomplish against Philadelphia.
Whenever you cover the Chiefs, because I know we talked about production meetings for broadcasters earlier, so why not for the last one? Whenever you have a chance to catch up with some of those players and coaches, what's your main takeaway for maybe, I don't know if there's a secret sauce, maybe it's the boring on to the next game, we take age challenges, the same thing, but is there anything that you almost walk away like, oh yeah, that's why they're the Chiefs. That's why I'm not surprised when they pull the rabbit out of the hat every year.
Yeah, no. So to be clear, I mean, I haven't had the Chiefs that much during this run. It's not a team that I've called a lot of their games. I have met with Mahomes in the past, but not recently. So I haven't had a really an inside look at them in these production meetings like I do with so many other teams. But I can see from afar just the work ethic that Patrick Mahomes has leads down into the rest of the team. I mean, I just feel like you have a quarterback like that is such an incredible leader. And we've seen different offensive pieces over the last 5 years. I mean, there's a lot of questions about them. Well, they're losing Tyreek Hill. They don't have a running back. Kelsey's getting older. No matter what was going on offensively, Mahomes always kept it together. I think that you can make the case that he's the greatest quarterback of all time. Now, not in 5 years after he wins maybe one or two more. Right now, you could say that he's the greatest quarterback of all time. And of course, that's a debate that would go on forever. And Brady with the Super Bowls and Montana. I get all that. But he is on that trajectory, if not there, as we speak. And I think anytime you've got a player like that, what it means for the rest of the organization, the rest of the offense, um, special, just special. And looking forward to watching this game. I know that a lot of people, as we said before, may have fatigue. I'm not. I think it's going to be a lot of fun to watch.
When you were framing the argument for why Mahomes might be the best of all time, for a second I thought you had been teleported out of the Zoom and Nick Wright had been teleported into the Zoom. But
Yeah, I know he's in that wavelength too.
he is, and I know him and Adam Shine are going back and forth right now as we build up to the game about if he is the GOAT. But nice to hear your perspective as well, Andrew, and hopefully, these games in college basketball continue to ramp up and you have an awesome run in March Madness and we can't wait to hear you do what you do and with golf and with football next year as well. Thank you so much for representing Syracuse every time you step behind the mic and do your thing.
You guys represent it just as much as any of the alums that you mentioned. So it means a lot to talk with you, Ian, and your whole group. And we wish you guys and girls all the best.
Thank you so much, Andrew. We'll talk to you soon.
You got it.